Welcome back to Ask Dr. Clarke. Today's topic is why it's okay to leave your addicted spouse. Many spouses live with an addicted partner and have for years. These spouses, like the wife whose question I'm answering today, have tried everything, and I mean everything, over not just months, but years to get their addict into recovery. Prayer, marriage counseling. And of course you should pray, and you might try marriage counseling, although it's usually a waste of time. The prayer's not. Rehabs, AA, Celebrate Recovery, interventions. Nothing has worked. The addict will not stop the addiction. Okay, here's today's question. Good evening, Dr. Clarke. That's a nice opening. I thank God that I came across your podcast. Well, that's nice of her to say. We're hoping that God's in charge of this. To make a long story short, I am a Christian woman. I've been in Christian counseling with my husband for well over a year with no progress. Okay, that's the first problem. She knows this now, I think. We may have talked on the phone, I'm not sure, but that's too long. Back when I did marriage counseling, now I just work with individual spouses in marital crisis, it was 5 to 8 sessions tops. You either change or you don't, and it can be fast. Well over a year, too much time. My husband is an addict. On and off, sometimes sober, sometimes not, recovering addict. You know what? He's not recovering that well. It has practically destroyed any shred of hope I've had in our marriage, I'm sure. My biggest struggle, now here's the key. My biggest struggle was feeling guilty. This is how women typically feel. Some men too. My biggest struggle was feeling guilty about leaving him because I took our vows seriously. Your podcast helped me realize that my husband abandoned me a long time ago. Yes, he did. And the fact that my husband doesn't go to church with us, doesn't even go to church. The only way the guy's going to change, anybody's going to change an addiction, is through God's power. He's not even going to church. His addiction, here's the key, another key, his addiction over the years, has changed him into someone I don't even know. I'm ready to walk away from this marriage. We have 2 young and impressionable daughters, and I don't want them to grow up in a home where one parent struggles in their recovery. She has that in quotes, and she should. You know, God doesn't want that either, I'm telling you. So she's wondering if I can do a podcast on women being married to alcoholics/addicts. So many women need this and are afraid to do what they know they need to do. Yeah, she's exactly right. A lot of us are afraid to leave out of worry our spouse may die, or because as Christians we're told to stay through sickness and in health, especially because addiction is considered a disease. You know what it is? It is a sin. Yes, it's a disease, it's a disorder, but you know what? Whatever. It's a sin and it needs to be corrected, and it can be. That's up to the addict. Look, I'm going to answer this question with a brief section from my next self-published book, the book on codependency. This is releasing August 2022. The title, The 20 Lies That Keep You with Your Abuser. So there's a little small section I'm going to read based on the answers to this question. Now make no mistake, an addict that refuses to stop the addiction and get into recovery is emotionally abusing you. That is emotional abuse. Okay, the fear for spouses of addicts is this, and this dear woman nailed it on the top of the head. My spouse, here's the fear, my spouse will die. The addicted spouse will die, commit suicide, or end up homeless, and it will be my fault because I abandoned him. Now, all these awful things may in fact happen, but if they do, it will be the addict's fault, not yours. It's not your fault. I mean, it's not your job to get him into recovery. Guess whose job that is? That's his job. He's the guy with the addiction. You've already tried and tried and tried, in many cases for years, with no success. He knows his addiction, whatever it is harming you and your family. He couldn't care less. He chooses to deny he has a problem. He chooses, and again, it's a choice. He can try to hide behind the disease model all he wants. He is choosing to stay in the addiction. He chooses to continue the addiction year after year after year. That's emotional abuse. And what does the Bible say? Always the most important place to go. Genesis 3, verses 1 through 24. These 3 persons sinned in the fall. Okay, we got Adam, Eve, and Satan. All 3 were held 100% responsible for their sinful choices. All 3 had consequences from God. You know, remember how Adam tried to push it off on Eve? This was not allowed by God. He faced the consequences, as did Eve, and of course Satan as well. Exodus 20, verses 3 through 4. Any person who refuses to work on his personal problem makes that problem an idol. It becomes his God, so he breaks the first 2 commandments. And that's true of addiction. It becomes the center of your life, and that becomes your God. That's sin. James 1, verses 13 through 15. A person sins by his own choice and his choice alone. In the Bible, no one is ever blamed for sin except the sinner, 100% fault of the sinner. So his addiction is a sin because of the damage it causes to him, you, and the children. His refusal to work on his addiction is also a sin. It's a sinful choice. You want to rescue him, don't you? You want to help him get into recovery from his individual problem or problems. Why? Because you are a rescuer. You're a nurturer. Most women are. You know who you should rescue? You and your children. Forget rescuing him. He doesn't want to be rescued. Here's what I recommend. 1, stop all efforts to research and understand his addiction. That's his job, not yours. Stop it. 2, stop all efforts to get him to work on his addiction. Again, he's on his own. Cut him loose. 3, work on your codependency and enabling his sinful behavior by seeing an individual counselor who understands addiction and the enabling process. And frankly, by reading Enough is Enough and preparing to leave your addict. Guess what? In this kind of a scenario, where an addict will not change and continues to relapse. You know what relapse means? It means he's sinning. Relapse doesn't sound so bad. Well, we all relapse. No, you don't have to. That also is a choice. All right? Now, the only way he's going to possibly change, and even that might be slight at this point, is if you leave him. That's drawing the line in the sand. And again, it's not totally about him anymore. You're protecting yourself and your children, and God is fine with that. Now, you'll find the Enough is Enough book on my website, davideclarkephd.com. That's Clarke with an E. Along with all my resources for marriages in crisis. If you want to make sure you have the right plan for your marital crisis, do a phone advice session with me. Many are doing this. I'll get the background in 45 minutes. I got a solid background. We talk through the issues, and I'll probably sell you one of my books and tell you exactly what to do. The phone advice is explained on the website. Finally, if you're benefiting from these videos and want to help us reach more spouses in marital crisis with very direct biblical advice, no beating around the bush, subscribe to my YouTube channel, tap the like button, and leave a rating and a review.